So good afternoon, everybody. And I have my senior colleagues here on the dais, Dr. Gautam, Dr. Natraj, Dr. Chandrasekhar, all of them with years of experience in the domain of agriculture extension. And in front of me, I have people from different agriculture science backgrounds. And the scientists, academics from different parts of the country. What I have been seeing in the recent years is that the Indian Society for Extension Education has been meeting very regularly. I've had the privilege of joining the seminar at Kathmandu. I missed me being with you at Dhaka in Bangladesh. In a way, I myself have become a member of this society. And as I said in the morning, this extension is very important. We need to give it the due importance. It is the starting point and the ending point. It bridges the clients and customers with the research and development centers. The research and development centers can work in blindness if they do not know what the requirements of the fields are. It's only the extension personnel who are in constant touch with the local community, who are capable of identifying the felt needs and unfelt needs and convert them into a package of research challenges, research problems, research projects, so that the scientists working in different domains are then able to work on those and give proper solutions. Otherwise, it can become a barren research. If a very serious study is done today, evaluation study of all the research projects that have come by way of thesis at PG level, PhD level, and at the postdoctorate level, a very small percentage of that would be those which can be considered as fruitful. That means the technology can be commercialized. Therefore, I would like to emphasize that extension is a starting point. That if the researchers are able to interact intensely with the extension personnel, then they would be able to identify what exactly are the challenges. Otherwise, it will be an aimless run. And of course, you know that it is the last mile because that's where you connect. It's a bridge. When we were working on the doubling farmers' income report, and Dr. Chandrasekhar was one of our very active members. He, along with another colleague, did a lot of work on extension. When we reviewed the literature at that point of time, we found that all the definitions were all centered around production. It talked about how production can be increased by transfer of technology. So when we all put our heads together as to what basic change can be brought in the definition of extension, then we realize that the definition of extension has to be in consonance with the demands of the society. And today, demands of the society are three. There are several challenges, but we can abstract them into three basic domains. One is, of course, the age-old food security. since food means nutrition, but in reality food has come to mean carbohydrate security, India has been suffering from nutrition deficiency. Therefore, we said extension must now talk about nutrition security. Though nutrition is one of the components of food, but because the generic term food is not conveying the meaning to the scientists, to the people, to the policy makers, we said now we should talk about nutrition security. So that we bring in the focus on proteins and fats and minerals, vitamins and so on. Second one is, yes, India is a superpower in the agriculture sector. It ranks within the top 5 globally in respect of 80% of the agriculture produce, 80%. And there are some, as you know, where it is number 1 or number 2, milk, for example, wheat and paddy. But has that super production converted into value for the farmers? No. So, if the farmers are not getting the value, obviously their incomes are bound to be low. Hence, extension should now start talking about the income security. Just as we talk of nutrition security for the consumers, extension should now start talking about the income security for the farmers. And when we say farmers, we should also mean landless agricultural labor who are dependent directly and indirectly on the health of our agriculture system. And together, the farmers, when you say agriculture workers includes farmers who own land and landless agriculture workers. So these two together, as per 2011 census, accounted for 260 million number, which is 48% of the total population of the country then. The latest studies, of course, we don't have a census as yet, as you know. The latest sample survey show it could be around 45.6%. That means 45.6% of India's population is agriculture workforce, which is very high. Number 3, that as we progressed on the production front and fell short in terms of nutrition and in terms of incomes for the farmers, we also compromised on the quality of not just the production environment, but the general ecology. So today we have problem with water, problem with soils, problem with carbon dioxide and other kinds of greenhouse gases. So in result, what's happening is, as they say in economics, the marginal rate of returns on agricultural investments are decreasing. Which means that if I want to increase my yield by 1 unit, I need to use more inputs today than what I was doing it yesterday. So if the need for inputs is increasing to achieve the desired productivity upgradations, obviously agriculture cannot become profitable, and therefore incomes cannot be had, and that has deleterious impact on the ecology at large. Therefore, extension in sum has to talk about nutrition security, income security, and ecological security. These are the 3 new challenges before the extension and the agriculture science at large. Now, how do you address all these things? Addressing the issue of nutrition may lie largely in the bucket of the agriculture scientists, but extension people have also a mandate there, because nutrition is not just a function of availability, of accessibility or affordability alone. It is also of awareness. So that age-old definition of FAO as to what is food security, it is predicated upon availability, accessibility, and affordability. The fourth one today is awareness. Otherwise, we will not have the children of the super rich becoming obese, having heart problems, right? In fact, obesity is becoming the new lifestyle disease in India, like many other countries. So, how extension can actually create that awareness and tell them what is to be eaten and what is not to be eaten and how to do it right. Now, coming to that issue of income, but before that, let me talk of ecology, how extension can play a role. Today, the greenhouse gas emissions is an account of many things: industry, automobiles, and agriculture. Agriculture accounts for 14% of the total quantum of greenhouse gas emitted, largely coming from paddy fields and then livestock because of enteric fermentation. But there is one important component which will help us in minimizing the greenhouse gases from the agriculture sector and simultaneously add to the incomes of the farmers. We always must create win-win situations. So how is that? Today, the decomposition of the food that has been generated on the farms is a serious challenge. Globally, as per the FAO, the wastage of agri-produce goes up to 40%. It varies from continent to continent and country to country depending upon the status of its agri-logistics. In our own country, the last study that we had in 2015 by CIFET is an ICAR organization, as you know, they were able to give us a conservative estimate, not a real estimate, because if you want to do a real estimate, then you must follow the food commodity from the farm gate right up to the end consumption, because loss happens at different stages. But a kind of a conservative study by CIFET shows that the food loss in India varies from 6% to 20 plus percentage, depending upon the perishability of the commodity. It can go up to 30-35% also in highly perishable commodities like milk, fruits, and vegetables. Now, if you take, and this is called as food loss and waste, if you take this food loss and waste as a country world over, then you will find that this country called food loss and waste ranks number 4th in terms of the total quantum of greenhouse gas emitted. Number 1 is China, number 2 is USA, number 3 is India, and 4th comes our friend, food loss and waste. And this is adding to the greenhouse gases. If only we are able to check this by upgrading our agri-logistics, that means storage, transportation, pack houses, seamless transportation systems, we'll be able to reduce that and reduce the emission of greenhouse gases, and simultaneously we are converting that money and that produce into money for the farmers. So it's a win-win situation. So extension has a role to play there, and how we can integrate the farm gates with the markets via the agri-logistics. So now let's come, this was all a context I was trying to build for you to say where extension has got a lot of role to play, and also what exactly are the challenges of agriculture or its evolution over the last 75 years. Since 1947, if you study the system of India's agriculture, you'll find that there are 5 phases. We are now in the 5th phase, beginning 2015, where the focus is more on incomes and welfare. So when we talk of incomes and welfare, that will help us to understand why secondary agriculture becomes important. What is welfare? We know child welfare, women welfare, backward class welfare, all kinds of welfare, labor welfare. But we have never talked about farmers' welfare. So we had Department of Agriculture, Ministry of Agriculture. Presuming that any growth that happens will automatically convert itself into incomes for the farmers and upgrade their welfare. That in a way is called as trickle-down theory. All those economists who believe in capitalist forces, market forces, they always talk about trickle-down theory, that if you create wealth for the nation, automatically everybody comes up above the poverty line. It has never happened anywhere. So direct welfare became very important. In 1929 and thereafter, we had a very severe Great Depression in the world. USA and European Union faced the worst challenges. They met what is called a recession. That means there was degrowth. Employment was not available. Inflation was very high. Because till then, they had been following what is called a classical economics model. That means market forces will take care of everything. Market knows how to allocate the resources. Where is the demand, it will decide itself. If that was so true, then there would not have been a Great Depression. So we needed another economist who came and said, no, this classical economics is not right. We now need to address the poverty and unemployment directly by talking to the people and doing something for them. And that man is John Maynard Keynes. So Keynesian economics has become very popular thereafter because he talked about welfare. He said that if we want to take care of the welfare, we need to create employment. So now, when you talk about farmers' welfare, how do we define farmers' welfare? So the concept of welfare can be prefixed to farmers to make it farmers' welfare. But first is to know what is welfare. So some people say welfare means health, happiness, and prosperity. Somebody else may say, no, it is about being at peace in the society, in the family. So there are different definitions of welfare. I'm not getting into that. Let's only remember so much that when we talk about welfare of the people, at the realistic level, at the practical level, what we want a family is that it is capable of meeting all its requirements. It should be able to meet its basic physiological needs, food, security, house, etc. And then all kinds of needs that go up, health, education of the children, meet contingency expenditures like health and other kinds of emergencies that may develop. You may want to go on a cultural tour, maybe wanting to participate in this kind of seminars and workshops. So, the concept of welfare in terms of practicality was best conceptualized by Abraham Maslow, a psychologist from America, who talked about what is called a need hierarchy theory. So he gave us 5 needs, 5 domains of needs: physiological needs, then affection needs, and then moving up, he talked about security, then he talked about the self-actualization. So we move from meeting the physiological needs to the 5th need, that is the self-actualization, where you have time to do what you want. You want to sit and listen to music? You have time. You want to read a book? You have time. But can our poor man, the poor farmer, think that he wants to listen to a music this afternoon and therefore he will not go and work? He may afford it today, but can he afford it all the time? So, for purpose of simplicity, we also in DFI committee said this much, that farmers' welfare can be said to be the target, and therefore we start seeing whether farmers are able to meet all these requirements, from physiological to the highest self-actualization. So if we want to achieve that, what do you require? You require many things, but certainly you require purchasing power, money. So, whether the farmers are able to generate that money required to meet these 5 requirements, 5 basic needs, not basic, 5 needs. If you now look at the incomes of the farmers, let us say the latest 2018-19 NSSO study through the Situation Assessment Survey, at 2018-19 prices, the average income of an agricultural household in India per month was rupees 10,024. That means per month, per annum, it becomes around 1 lakh, some 2,000 or something. Now, is this 1 lakh plus per annum enough to meet all these needs? How many of you think it is enough? How many of you think it is not enough? Yes. So there are all of you thinking that is not enough. That is obvious. I was only putting that question before you so that if some of you are sleeping, can wake up. Okay. So just know so much that the average incomes of the farmers are very poor, very low, and it is not enough to meet these needs, and therefore we can't say that farmer has attained welfare. So if the ministries of agriculture at the central government level and the agriculture departments at the state levels are now re-Christianing themselves as ministries or departments of farmers' welfare, then there's a purpose behind that, and therefore it becomes incumbent upon scientists and academics to say, what do you mean by welfare? Even today, we do not have a comprehensive understanding of farmers' welfare. So I would suggest that you should discuss this topic. What do you mean by farmers' welfare? Well, unless you are clear about the target, then there is no way of working on it. It will be a blind shot otherwise. Now, welfare, if it means meeting all these needs, it translates into savings. It translates into savings. I earn X amount of money, that is a gross income, then I spend that on basic needs like food, security, etc. Then I'm left with a sum of Y, and that Y is called my saving. But if rupees 10,024 is the average monthly income, and monthly consumption expenditures are almost there, average monthly consumption expenditures are almost there. In 2012-13, according to the Situation Assessment Survey, the monthly consumption expenditure was rupees 6,223 as against the average income of 6,426, which means that the savings amounted to rupees 203 per month. So if you are left with 200 rupees notes plus one 2 rupee currency and one rupee currency at the end of the month, and you have to go to a doctor whose bill is 500 rupees, you can imagine what happens to that farming community family, right? So savings are very important. And savings will increase provided your income increases. Your income will increase provided your volume of production is increasing. And your incomes will increase provided your cost of production is decreasing. So if savings are important, because apart from meeting your contingent expenditures, you also need money to put back into the farm, to buy a new machinery, new seeds, new water systems. Otherwise, there cannot be growth in agriculture, any enterprise for that matter. So what we come to the conclusion that if we need to increase income, if you need to increase welfare, you need to increase income. Now in India or in agriculture sector the world over, there are certain limitations to increasing the income in agriculture sector. The first limitation is that agriculture is a highly risk-prone enterprise. It is dependent on nature. So the factors of production or the production environment are not always under control. Unlike in the industry where mechanization, where the machine-led production happens, the factors of environment can be controlled, but not in agriculture. So however best we try, there will be still some vulnerabilities. Second, in India, where the small holdings are dominant, where per capita land holding is around 1.1 hectares, notwithstanding your efficiency, the volume of business is so small that you can't have good profits. In fact, research studies are saying that the small farms are more efficient than large farms. But the volume of business being small, the farmers cannot have large volumes of transaction and therefore the incomes are poor. This income is now to be related to the human resource. What is that the farmers have in our country? So now two things were understood: vulnerability of agriculture system and small and marginal nature of land holding are the two critical factors that are going to impede our efforts to increase the incomes. Now, what does that mean? If land is one asset that the farmers have, the second asset that they have is their own manpower. We said that 45.6% of India's population depends on agriculture. That means we have a huge people size dependent on agriculture, in agriculture. So that is an asset. So land and human power are the two basic assets that the farmers have. Now land and human power are to be used properly. But today's data shows on labor force participation rate that the productivity of human power in India is very low. The reason is that there is not much to work. There is not many options to work. So in agriculture, if we want everybody to be engaged intensively, then there must be that much of land, or that same land is being used again and again because it has got better irrigation facilities, better infrastructure facilities. That means you can increase the cropping intensity. Suppose we make cropping intensity at 300%. 1 acre becomes 3 acres, so the family will find better jobs. Today, that is the biggest challenge. And welfare is a function of income. Income is a function of employment. These three things you must remember. Welfare is a function of income. Income is a function of employment. Only when you have employment, you get income. But here the farmers are not getting employment. So ultimately, welfare becomes a function of two things. One is income that you generate, and second, what you get from government as a welfare. You may get an old age pension. Now say Karnataka says you can ride free in the bus, for example. It's all a part of welfare. Somebody may say, what is this? But for that poor family who may have to reach the hospital and save as much money as possible to pay to the doctor, if he gets that free ride, it is a big support. I'm just giving an example. Therefore, welfare here is a function of income that you can generate and the welfare support that governments can offer you. Some of the people may say that, yes, farmers don't need it. I've been seeing a lot of WhatsApp messages also. But let me tell you, and I'm sure many of you know, agriculture incomes across the world are always relatively low. In America, where the average holding size is 1,000 acres, even in America, the farmer's income, consisting of farm income and non-farm income, are in the ratio of 60:40. And it is the same thing in India. So whether you own 1 acre or 1,000 acres, the farmer's income comes from farm comes from non-farm. That means working elsewhere. And that ratio is 60:40. Smaller the size, higher is your share of non-farm income. In India, for example, a large farmer earns 85% of his income from farming, 15% from non-farm, maybe because his son has become a KS officer or an assistant professor. But if it's a marginal farmer, he will be earning only 35% from farm. And he has to depend on non-farm income for 65%. Therefore, his son or daughter will be working as a security guard outside the US Bangalore campus or in one of the IT companies. I mean, these are the realities. Which means that we now need to focus on both the things, how to improve income and therefore employment opportunities. And please remember that government support, whether it's American government or India government or Belgium, what is the other country, or European governments, all have to support the farmers. However, you and I should now see how we can reduce that ratio of welfare from the government and make the farmers self-reliant so that they can generate higher ratio of incomes. Because no farmer also wants to hang on to the apron strings of government. He is equally rational, he is equally egoistic in the sense that he wants to live a life of pride. He would be very happy to earn his own income, provided we give him that opportunity. So this now brings us to the door of secondary agriculture. That if we are not able to generate enough employment opportunities in the primary agriculture, how do we now generate alternate employment opportunities? And therefore, that takes us into the secondary agriculture. So as you learned in the morning, primary agriculture is a primary economic activity. In economics, you know that we have got primary sector, secondary sector, tertiary sector. So within the primary sector, we have primary agriculture because it depends on nature. It uses carbon dioxide, sun's rays, and chlorophyll in the leaf, plant, and produces its own food. The animal feeds on this plant, goes through the physiological process, and produces its own food. So these are all natural production systems. So a secondary agriculture is not a natural production system, but it is a man-induced value addition to the primary agriculture produce. So secondary agriculture is a value addition. It extends the value. It helps the people to capture greater value. Therefore, we need to promote secondary agriculture. So secondary agriculture is not a new thing. It is being talked about for many decades, at least from 1960s onwards. We have talked about secondary agriculture. In the world, I'm telling. I heard to Professor Changapa's presidential speech at Varanasi Conference of Agriculture Economics speaking on secondary agriculture. He delivered the presidential address. But there is not one agreement on what is secondary agriculture, incidentally. World over, neither European Union agrees, nor USA agrees, nor India agrees. So there is no consensus on the definition of secondary agriculture. Just as there is no consensus on welfare, there is also no consensus on secondary agriculture. Which only means that each country, according to its own situations, has to define what is secondary agriculture and work on it. So in India, the problems are employment, problems are income, and related to agriculture, emission of greenhouse gases, food loss and wastage. These are our challenges. So can secondary agriculture address these issues? So you need to define secondary agriculture accordingly. So when we now say that we want to reduce the food loss and waste and therefore we need to do better post-harvest management, we are getting into secondary agriculture. When you say that I would like to improve productivity not of one crop, but productivity of the asset called land. I'm not interested how much I achieved. Did I get 100 tons per acre of sugar cane and got into the Guinness World Record, or produced 6 tons of maize per acre and got into the world? No. I'm not interested in getting the world Guinness record. What I'm interested in is maximizing my output from that asset, 1 acre of land that I have. So, what can be done? I say that yes, all right, I grew paddy. I won't burn my paddy, but I'll use the paddy straw to make the beds and produce mushroom, for example. I'm getting into secondary agriculture. If at the macro level we say that all the paddy being burned in Punjab, Haryana, West Uttar Pradesh is all aggregated and it is transported to a ethanol production unit, I'm getting into secondary agriculture. So just see, all these examples are showing that you are now using the same agriculture produce, whether it is the main produce or the secondary produce, to add value. So we're all getting into secondary agriculture there. So if you are doing that, yes, you stop burning paddy, and therefore, pollution has come down, greenhouse gas has come down. You are adding value to what is called waste paddy straw. You set up that ethanol unit, and therefore people got jobs there. Some people had to aggregate it and then take it to that plant because all our farms are small. Aggregation generates a job. So all the challenges of agriculture today, jobs, income, pollution, greenhouse gas emission, are all getting addressed through secondary agriculture. Now, secondary agriculture, yes, it requires a lot of processing. It requires bioprocessing, bioengineering, biotechnology, and more sophisticated levels we reach, better we are able to process. So when we do this thing, we are able to produce a range of commodities. We may produce fuel, for example, ethanol. We may produce a construction material, composites, for example. We may use the hair, for example, aggregate it and generate a lot of produce from the hair of the human being, hair of the animals. We can use viscera, we can use bones, we can use fins. And we saw all this, they showed us how, for example, the banana pseudo stem is being used to produce Ganesha. Right? So we're adding value. So that means the same products could have been manufactured by using fossil resources, iron ore, bauxite, coal, petroleum, etc. Or we're generating the same thing using now bioresources. So we're actually getting into bioeconomy, bioindustries, bioprocessing. So it takes us into bioeconomy. As we understand bioeconomy, that means bioeconomy now substitutes the fossil resources by the agri-resources, forest resources. And on this, there is a common understanding across the world that bioeconomy in the world means using bioresources. But European Union goes one step forward and talks about circular economy. A circular economy is that we start somewhere and end at the same point. Okay? So, let us say we produce green manuring plants. The green manuring plants are lopped and added to the soil. It is adding nitrogen. First, to grow that, we use the soil and the water. We again got back into the soil. In circular economy, reuse, recycle is the principle. But what is more important is that you produce things in such a way that it is used for as long a time as possible. Today, what do the people want? buy a shirt today and throw it next month because new design they want. But in the good old times, we bought a shirt and used it for 10 years. So he was much more ecologically friendly than today's man. So we want to now have a car which can last for a long time. We want to have a house which can last for a longer time. So one of the basic principles of circular economy is that you manufacture anything and everything which will last for a longer time. You don't have to use and throw it. So in European Union, they combine this bioeconomy and circular economy and call it as ecological economy or bioecology. So both bioeconomy and circular economy will require secondary agriculture because you need bioresources and you also want to prolong the lifespan. So secondary agriculture is that which is a pivot, is a fulcrum. It keeps that machine called bioeconomy and circular economy rolling. So secondary agriculture, you must understand, therefore, that it can happen at different stages. This is what I want you to understand, because here you can't go and start putting up a steel plant of 10 million tons which Jindal has put up at Hospet. You can't ask a farmer to go and do that. So if processing is integral to secondary agriculture, we can have scales of processing plants. We can have micro industries, enterprises. We can have small scale industries. We can have medium scale. We can have large scale. We can have mega scale. And as we go up, the quantum of capital required is different. Quantum of intensity of technology is different. So we, in agriculture sector, extension people, are we going to tell them to set up a steel plant? Are you going to tell them to put up an aluminium plant because it is part of bioeconomy? No. We as agriculture extension machinery, either a scientist or academics or extension worker, are concerned with farmer who is having small size, marginal size. We know that he's not getting enough employment on his farm. He's not getting enough income from the farm because he doesn't have employment. We therefore want to set up micro-scale units. So as agriculture extension officers and scientists, you have to now find out how you can help the farmer to generate employment through the bioeconomy, through the circular economy principles, and how you utilize the resources better. Today, if there is a wastage, it is wastage because we are not packing the perishable commodity properly. So if we teach him to pack properly, obviously one employment is generated there. If you say that in a village of 500 farmers, somebody takes the responsibility of aggregating the produce and then connecting it with a medium-scale industry, which is located in Bangalore, for example, then that aggregation is a job. It generates a unit of employment and therefore income. So, as agriculture people, if you would like to focus on employment generation, then the starting point once again is our research labs. Because as a researcher, what is his hypothesis? Does he want to increase productivity alone? Productivity of what? Is it of grains or tubers or fruits, or is it productivity of the biomass? Because the bioprocessor may say, I need more of biomass than the grain. So researcher has to reset his problems and produce what is good to support bioeconomy. And therefore, the processing through secondary agriculture becomes more meaningful. So from there, how does somebody dealing with technology, business management principles, incubation centers, think of developing small projects which can be set up at the village level, and therefore they are able to become their own masters, more their own employees. They become self-employed. So I will not get into all the details. You listen to that in the next presentations. But you must only know that secondary agriculture is not only small things that we saw outside. Secondary agriculture includes several things. But we must focus only on these things. Therefore, in our DFI report, we were very clear that since we are talking about doubling farmers' income or income approach to agriculture, and income means employment, how do you find employment to supplement what is happening on the farm? And therefore, the role of the micro-enterprises of different nature. So before I conclude, let me talk a bit of the philosophy of that. That micro-enterprises become very important because they help a large section of the society. Today in India, where we have too much of population, and population is still growing, and we have having a very huge percentage within that working age from 15 to 60 years. It's the highest in the world, and we call it as a demographic dividend. Is it possible for us to find employment for all these people? That's the biggest challenge. When you have a capital-intensive, technology-intensive enterprise, the number of jobs created is less. Per unit investment and per unit investment related jobs will keep decreasing as you go up the scale. And today with digital technology or what is called emerging technology available, where robotics and sensors are substituting the jobs, the number of jobs that we will create through the non-farm sector will be lesser and lesser through industry, manufacturing, services. And second challenge, of course, is that every country is industrializing. In 19th century, only some countries were industrialized, UK and European Union to some extent, USA. So they could sell their produce across the world. Today it is not possible. So what it means is that the number of jobs that we want to provide to our people may not be available in the non-farm sector over the next few decades. But without employment, there cannot be welfare. Therefore, we need to start focusing on employment generation through different means. And that's where people like Mahatma Gandhi spoke about decentralized industrialization, where you combine optimally the manpower and the technology centered around the human beings and generate employment. But if you talk to the economists, then they'll say that there's no scales of economy there. If you have small units, the problem is purchase of inputs becomes costly, management of sales becomes costly. So how do we create large number of small enterprises without compromising the scales of economy? That is the biggest challenge. That is another, problem before the scientists and the entrepreneurs. Possibly the answer lies in deploying digital technology. Today, in 21st century, we have the advantage